It's time for round 2 of our Whiskey of the Year tournament. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we've got an awesome lineup in front of us for round 2 of the Whiskey of the Year tournament to determine the best whiskey of 2024. If you haven't seen the first video in the series, round 1, do recommend you check that out. But to recap how we're doing this, I recently made a video showing off my top 16 whiskeys of 2024. We are putting all of them into a bracket challenge. There's 4 groups of 4. One winner from each of those groups will advance via a blind matchup. And then ultimately, we'll put those final 4 together for one last round to determine the best whiskey of 2024. Today is round 2. Let me show you the contenders. So we've got Larceny Barrel Proof Batch C9 24. This was my winner from blinding all the Larcenys this year. Very special batch. It's grown on me over time and excited to see how it does here. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch A124. This was a surprise. Did not particularly love this batch when it came out, but now that it's opened up, it actually won my Elijah Craig blind and has earned its spot. Then we move on to some amazing releases of the year. We've got Old Fitzgerald 13-year, very, very special. One of the more expensive and exclusive whiskeys I've ever tasted, and it's amazing. So definitely a favorite for this round and maybe for the whole tournament. We'll see how it holds up. And then we've got Bardstown Bourbon Company's Discovery Series 12, which has some 14-year-old whiskey in there and is just a phenomenal release. For around 140 bucks, this is one of the more available, awesome whiskeys from 2024. So that's our list of contenders today. In the interest of keeping these videos quick, I'm just gonna move these off the table, set up the blind, cut right to that for you guys, and we'll dive in. Okay, one jump cut later, we're ready with our blind. Obviously, I know the bottle's at play, but I've mixed up the order. These have been sitting and opening up for about 15 minutes now, so no idea what the order is here. We'll start over on my right, your left, and we'll call this glass A. We'll work our way down to glass D on the other end. But diving right in, glass A on the nose. We'll start on the nose for each of these, then move to the palate. Smells like sweet and fresh even. Some bright cherry. Maybe a honey and brown sugar thing going on. Yeah, definitely that brown sugar honey experience. Ooh, maybe a touch of a darker berry too. Not just like that bright red cherry, but a dark black cherry or blackberry note. Some oak, but I wouldn't call it a super dense, heavy oak. It's more of a lighter oakiness coming through. Okay, so nice, sweet, fresh, definitely like didn't have to dig too much to get some of those flavors either, so kind of jumping out of the glass. All right, let's go into glass B on the nose. Ooh, okay, much darker and oakier. Still some vibrant cherry, but it's more of a simmering cherry jam kind of experience. But I am getting more oak. A little more sting to this nose as well. So it's got kind of an effervescent but slight ethanol quality. But the oak is there for sure. Maybe a little bit of a touch of bitterness, like a leather on this one. Okay, so that one's definitely a little bit darker and oakier than glass A was, but not too dissimilar, and neither one of those was like in a realm of its own over the other. So let's keep going. Glass C. Ooh, okay. Sweetened up quite a bit here. This has a wheat presence to it for me. There are 2 wheated bourbons and 2 non-wheated bourbons in this lineup, and a lot of them are from Heaven Hill, which it might make it a little bit harder to discern the profiles. But this has a wheat punch to it. Kind of like Wheaties, some chocolate, maybe a touch of that red cherry, but mostly it's this like dark chocolate and Wheaties, wheat forward experience, maybe wheat bread kind of nose to it. All right, and then glass D on the nose. Oh, whoa. That's nice. Oak, beautiful oak. This rich oak, almost like a dusty, leathery furniture store, 1950s, 1960s furniture store kind of oak. Cherry as well. There's like a liveliness to it as some vanilla comes through. I don't know, maybe it's a touch of nut as well. Almost like a walnut, or could be peanut, but something nutty. It might take me a little more time to put my nose or my finger on that quality of the nose, but the oak is probably the most prominent there, and it's that dusty quality. It's beautiful oak. So that covers the noses. I feel like of the first 3, they're on sort of a similar plane for me, but I do think Glass D's nose is sticking out to me the most. We'll see how that develops on the palate. Let's waste no time though and go right in. Cheers, everybody. Glass A on the palate. Nice. I think brown sugar was the star of that sip. Lots of brown sugar and oakiness, cherry. Yeah, really nice cherry. It's lingering for a while too. Maybe something interesting that entered into that equation was a little orange citrus pop for me just on that sip. We'll see how that develops, but I think the star was that nice middle of the road brown sugar that you're looking for from like a more well-aged bourbon. It's got some heat to it, a little bit of a simmering cinnamon type heat, and that keeps it going for quite a while. I think that matches up nicely with the cherry. So these are all going to be great, but that is a very good start. All right, I'm going to get water between each of these sips so I can refresh my palate. Might cause a little bit more cutting, but it's the most fair way to do it. Okay, moving into Glass B on the palate. Yeah, definitely some oak on the nose. Cheers. Wow. Okay, so while Glass A had the brown sugar cherry thing, this goes much more into a rawness, like a honey, barrel char, oak. It's a little tannic, and that takes a little bit to get by. It's a little spicy too, like a dry spice, the leather, barrel char like I mentioned. But yeah, it's got this rawness to it, a little bit of a tannic note, but then the sweetness really kicks in, and that heat again keeps it lingering on your palate. Definitely a very interesting profile. Took me aback a little bit for a second, but then it really rides out into that honey, brown sugar sweetness. But again, there's that kind of interesting tannic oak or rawness to it. All right, more water and then we'll go to Glass C. All right, Glass C now on the palate. Cheers. Whoa. Yeah, wheat, just straight up spicy wheat is at the center of that sip, just like it was on the nose. Chocolate, very much there. It's sort of milk chocolatey on the palate, more dark chocolate maybe on the nose, but nice rich milk chocolate. And raspberry. That distinctly came through for me, almost like a chocolate covered raspberry, maybe a chocolate covered like darker cherry. That's very nice. And the wheat, it's interesting. I feel like the spice bloomed up about halfway through the sip for me. and overtook my palate. But then, since there is that wheat characteristic, I think it tapers down and the sweetness rides for a really long time. Almost like you just had a chocolate covered raspberry candy or something like that, and you can feel the sweetness on your palate. All right, some more water and then we'll go to Glass D. Glass D rounds out the lineup. Let's dive in. Cheers. Wow. That has a little bit of that raspberry cherry jam. Ooh, blackberry. Something more fruity. Lots of berries. But the star, kind of like Glass A's star was that brown sugar main note. The star of this is this oak quality. Dusty, a little bit leathery, maybe tobacco. That's a good note to kind of nail down on the finish here. Those berries along with some tobacco. But it's the oak at the front of the palate even, not even on the back. The back's more that berry, but the front was this oak dustiness. Beautiful presentation of the oak. All right, it's a great run through. What I'm gonna do now is go back in reverse order and then do some A/B testing to figure out my definitive winner and order here. I will cut through all of that or fast forward through all of that and then give you a recap once that's all over. Let's do it. Welcome back, everybody. That was kind of a wild ride. I had to do a lot of discerning and kind of digging deep on this particular lineup, and things have shifted around quite a bit. Things have developed. I'm gonna reveal my order and I'll walk you through how things have kind of gone as we do that. So for me, in fourth place for round 2, and I do want to caveat it all by saying all of these are great. None of these were lackluster per se. We're talking about excellent whiskeys. But in fourth place was Glass B. This slight tannicness to this one, that rawness is intriguing, I think, but it ultimately doesn't have some of the more sweet, beautiful qualities that some of these other whiskeys do. And it just had that element that was a little bit harder to get over. So different, kind of interesting profile, very flavorful, but not holding up to the rest of them quite as much. Let's see what it was. Okay. That's the Elijah Craig A124. I'm not super surprised by that. I remember this raw honey and oak note to it. It's very, very good. I found it really interesting in my Elijah Craig blind, and it's been very interesting again today as we've tasted these 4, but it did lack some of the balance of the others. All right, in third place for me today, this was kind of a struggle. The top 3 here really bounced around and there's qualities to all of them. But in third place was for me, Glass A. This was beautiful. The brown sugar, amazing. The orange citrus really came through, and there ended up being this like peanut brittle experience on the palate for me. Beautiful. It just fell like a slight quarter notch below some of the others on the table. So let's see what it was. Wow. Discovery Series 12. Dang. I would have put money on this starting out. Thought this might take down the old Fitz. I thought this was a contender, kind of a sneaky sleeper pick for the whole bracket. But it fell short to even, that means we have Larceny Barrel Proof still on the table. This is very, very good. Super complex, very nuanced. The way it develops and offers you more and more flavors is great. And just the simplicity of brown sugar as the first impression is great. Then it continues to develop and add more layers, but the brown sugar is right at the core. It's very, very good. But I am surprised that it came in third. That means we've got our last 2 whiskeys, 2 wheated profiles, and I do want to admit, I tend toward wheated bourbons a lot in blinds and just in my collection, so keep that in mind as you discern. But we've got 2 left. This was a battle. This was a legitimate back and forth kind of haymaker fight between these 2. For me, I'm going to reveal my winner, and then I'll talk through the reasons. My winner today was Glass D. This is spectacular, and so is Glass C. But let me walk you through. So for Glass C, very wheat forward, chocolatey, and candy-like with that cherry, chocolate-covered raspberry, whatever it is, all the way through. The palate on this whiskey, Glass C, is probably the best palate of all of them. That's what I would say. I genuinely believe that. The strength of it is exceptional, and the sweetness and the chocolate and cherry is amazing. The reason Glass D won is that it also has a very good palate. Maybe not quite as good as Glass C, but close. But the nose might be one of the best noses I've ever smelled. That oak and cherry is phenomenal. And then the finish is exceptional. The finish for me is long, and it's the way the berry notes and even some tobacco really starts to rise up and come through on the sip, that if you just let it sit for a while, it starts to kind of pop that way. So maybe the palate isn't quite as strong as Glass C, but every other aspect of the whiskey was a step above. So in second place, we had Larceny Barrel Proof C924, which means our first place winner is Old Fitz 13, very, very special. So I do feel like the Old Fitz nose is very distinct, and I had a sense that might be it. The amount of wheat on the Larceny is cool. I mean, that's one of the most straightforward wheat profiles you can get, and it's beautiful. I really underestimated Larceny C9 24 this year. I tend to love Larceny's. It's won my Whiskey of the Year bracket before when I had a lot less whiskey, but it's always done well for me. I didn't really think there was an exceptional batch this year, but I was wrong. C9 24 is amazing. If it's still sitting on shelves near you, pick one up for that 70 or 80 bucks. Really, really good. The fact that it beat Discovery Series 12 just says a lot, given how much I like that. But Old Fitz, it's just too unique to not stand out in a blind matchup, and the nose and the finish are too special not to kind of have an edge. The palate's very, very good. It's lower proof. I want to note that too, at 100 proof compared to these other ones that are all barrel strength essentially. It still didn't pale in comparison. In fact, I think that gave it some time to unfold its flavors a little bit more rather than just overpowering your palate. But Old Fitzgerald, 13, very, very special. That's going to be moving on. Round one, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, we did have a winner in Russell's Reserve 15. So two of the heavy hitters are still in the game and will be going up against each other in our final blind. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Let me know in the comments below, did this go the way you thought, or have you tasted any of these this year, and what did you think? While you're at it, hit the like button on this video. That gets it out to the most people. And then if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the Bourbon Hutch as we launch into 2025 with a lot more great content for you. Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.